Voters stayed away from Hong Kong's first patriots-only election, where opposition candidates were barred from standing. It drew a record low turnout of 27.5%. Earlier, I asked Director of the Committee for Freedom in Hong Kong Foundation, Mark Sabah, why these so-called elections are significant.
So tell me about Sunday's district council election in Hong Kong. Why was that significant?
Well, it's significant because it's the first elections that have been held since 2019 at the height of the protest movement. But the most important thing is the massively low turnout, only 27% compared to over 70% in 2019. And clearly people are voting with their feet and not showing up. I would argue that it's a vote against the current system. It's a vote against John Lee, the chief executive. It's a vote against the way Hong Kong is going. And people would rather not vote than take part in a sham election. And also, most of the candidates had to be patriots only, pre-selected by the CCP. There were only around 80 seats or so which were allowed freely available, down from 400 in 2019. And so I would argue that the low turnout is a very clear sign that people there are voting with their feet. They don't have faith in the current system, and they certainly don't have faith in the way that Hong Kong is being governed.
Would you say this low turnout is like a protest a silent protest from the people in Hong Kong?
Absolutely. In a Hong Kong where you can no longer protest, where that's something that can land you in prison, not voting is the closest you get to protesting, absolutely.
Can you tell me more about who the candidates were in the Hong Kong elections?
So most of the candidates had to be patriots first. I say patriots, obviously, in inverted commas. They had to be hand-selected by CCP-approved people in the Hong Kong authorities, and they had to be people who would toe the line and rubber stamp anything that the chief executive wanted to do. So the makeup of Hong Kong has changed dramatically when you think of how many democratically minded people stood in 2019. That's basically collapsed now. The 88, relatively free seats themselves are meaningless as there is a crackdown on free speech and protest. So what's the point? And I think your previous question was right, that the low turnout shows that people are just protesting by not participating.
And the Hong Kong publisher and pro-democracy activist Jimmy Lai's trial is next week. What's he on trial for?
So it's a national security charge. He's being charged with foreign collusion. And of course, almost everything in Hong Kong now can be charged under the national security law. Anything can be, terrorism or subversion or colluding with foreign forces and so on. So it's a nonsense trial. It's a sham trial. It's a show trial. We know what the outcome is going to be. He knows what the outcome is going to be. It's almost Soviet in terms of the show trial mentality. And it's meaningless in terms of justice. He wasn't allowed his own choice of lawyer. He's been detained repeatedly over the last 1,000 days or so, and no one really has a sense that the court is going to work in a fair fashion.
And Jimmy Lai's son, Sebastian Lai, is here campaigning for his release. What is he specifically asking for?
Well, first of all, he's asking for the British government to stand up and demand the release of a British citizen who spent over 3 years in prison in Hong Kong. And so far, the British government response has been, at best, weak. They've made a few statements here and there saying that he should be freed. They're now saying that they're seeking consular access, which is appalling, given that he's a British citizen and he should have had consular access right from the start. And so Sebastian Lai is here advocating for his father, demanding that the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary themselves demand that Jimmy Lai is released and that the charges against him are dropped. He's a British citizen. He's entitled to every protection that every other British citizen is entitled to.
And the new Foreign Secretary in the UK, do you think he'll take action?
Well, David Cameron comes from a position of being the golden era Prime Minister. He did everything he could to increase relations with China. So our hopes are fairly low that he's going to stand tall against the CCP or stand tall against Hong Kong. We hope that he does. We hope the meeting with Sebastian Lai encourages him that that's the right thing to do. And we hope that he actually does take some forceful action rather than just saying lots of nice things and saying the right words, that he actually does take concrete steps to see Jimmy Lai released.
Mark Sabah, Director for the Committee of Freedom for Hong Kong Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us.